The morning, everything started to look normal. I arrived at the office earlier than most people, like I usually did. The building was quiet, and the lights in the hallway were still dim. I liked coming early because it gave me time to focus before the noise of the day began. I placed my bag on my desk and turned on my computer. While it loaded, I made a cup of coffee in the small kitchen near the hallway. When I came back, my inbox already had 3 new emails. That was strange. It was barely 7:30 in the morning. The subject lines caught my attention immediately. Urgent. Project report missing data. Need explanation ASAP. Executive review moved to today. My stomach tightened. The project report was something I had spent weeks preparing. It was supposed to be presented next week, not today. I opened the first email quickly. The message said the report submitted under my name contained major errors and missing information. According to the message, the numbers were incomplete and several important pages were gone. I frowned at the screen. That made no sense. I had finished the report 2 nights earlier. I checked every detail carefully before submitting it. Something was wrong. Before I could read the rest of the emails, footsteps echoed across the office floor. More coworkers were arriving. A few of them looked at me strangely when they walked past my desk. One person whispered something to another. Both of them glanced in my direction. That was when the uncomfortable feeling in my chest grew stronger. It felt like people already believed something bad had happened, but I still had no idea what. And deep inside, I felt something else too. The strange feeling that the situation wasn't just a mistake. It felt planned. By 8 o'clock, the office was full. Normally the room buzzed with casual conversations and the sound of keyboards. But that morning felt different. Whispers moved quietly from desk to desk. Every time someone passed by my workspace, I felt their eyes on me. I tried to focus on the emails again. The second message came from upper management. They wanted an explanation about the report errors before the executive meeting later that morning. The third email said something even worse. The presentation had been moved from next week to the day at 10 o'clock. That gave me less than 2 hours. 2 hours to explain mistakes I hadn't even made. My hands moved quickly across the keyboard as I opened the project file I had submitted. The document appeared on the screen. But the moment I began scrolling, my heart dropped. Large sections were missing. Important charts had disappeared. Several financial numbers had been replaced with blank spaces. It looked exactly like the broken report described in the email. But this was not the version I had submitted. I knew that for certain. I always saved backup copies of my work. Quickly, I searched through my folders until I found the original file from 2 nights earlier. I opened it. Everything was perfect. All the charts were there. Every number was correct. The full report was complete. I stared at the 2 files side by side. One was accurate. The other looked destroyed. That meant only one thing. Someone had changed the file after I submitted it, and they had done it under my name. The realization made my chest feel cold, because if the executives believed I had ruined that report, my career might end before the day was over. At 9 o'clock, my manager walked toward my desk. Their expression was serious. "We need to talk," they said quietly. I nodded and followed them to a small meeting room. The door closed behind us. They placed a printed copy of the broken report on the table. "Do you recognize this?" they asked. "Yes," I said carefully. "It's the project report." They tapped the missing sections with their finger. "Then you know there are problems here." "I do," I replied, "but I didn't submit this version." Their eyes narrowed slightly. "What do you mean?" I opened my laptop and showed them the backup file. "This is the report I completed." I explained. They leaned closer to the screen. The difference was obvious. The backup file was complete. The printed report was not. My manager looked confused. "These documents should be identical," they said. "I know." For a moment, the room stayed quiet. Then they asked the question I had been expecting. "Are you suggesting someone alter the file?" "Yes." My voice sounded calm, but inside my mind was racing. They leaned back in their chair. "That's a serious claim." "I understand," I said. They looked at the broken report again. "The executive meeting is in 1 hour," they said slowly. "They will want answers." "I'll explain everything," I replied. But even as I said those words, a troubling thought formed in my mind. If someone had really changed a report on purpose, then the meeting wasn't just about mistakes. It might be a trap, and I was walking straight into it. By the time the meeting began, nearly everyone in the department had heard about the report. I could feel the tension in the air as people gathered in the conference room. Some looked curious. Others looked uncomfortable. A few avoided looking at me completely. I took a seat near the end of the table and placed my laptop in front of me. Executives began entering the room. When the door finally closed, the director started the meeting. "We're here to review the project report submitted earlier this week," they said. Their tone was calm, but serious. They opened the printed version of the broken report. "This document has major problems." Several heads nodded around the table. My manager glanced at me. "This report was prepared by you," the director continued. "Yes," I replied. "Then please explain why important data is missing." Every eye in the room turned toward me. I opened my laptop slowly. The report was altered after I submitted it. I said, "A few people shifted in their chairs." "That's a bold statement," the director said. "I can prove it." I connected my laptop to the large screen on the wall. The backup file appeared. "This is the original version," I explained. I scrolled through the pages. Charts appeared. Financial data filled the tables. Everything was complete. Then I opened the broken version. The difference was clear. Silence filled the room. Finally, one executive spoke. "Are you saying someone deliberately changed the report?" "Yes," I answered. The room grew even quieter, because if that was true, then someone inside the company had tried to sabotage the project, and possibly my career. The director studied both versions of the report carefully. The contrast between them was obvious. One version showed weeks of organized work. The other looked like it had been destroyed. "Who had access to the document after you submitted it?" the director asked. "Several people," I replied. "The project team shared the file system." They nodded slowly. "That means we need to check the system logs." My heart beat faster. If the logs showed who changed the report, the truth might appear quickly. But something still worried me. People who planned traps often prepared for situations like this. "What time did you finish the report?" another executive asked. 2 nights ago, I answered. "And you didn't notice the changes until this morning?" "Yes." The director folded their hands. "Until we verify the system records, the responsibility for this document remains unclear." I understood what that meant. Even if I was telling the truth, suspicion still pointed toward me. The meeting ended shortly after. Executives left the room quietly. My coworkers began whispering again. As I packed my laptop, I heard one sentence from across the room. "Looks like someone finally got caught." I didn't react. But inside my mind, the message became clear. Someone had worked hard to make this look like my failure. And they probably believed their plan was working. But they had made one mistake. They assumed the truth would stay hidden. And I was about to prove them wrong. After the meeting ended, I returned to my desk. But I couldn't focus on normal work. The whispers around the office were louder now. People thought I couldn't hear them. But I did. Maybe the pressure got to them. I always wondered how they finish reports so fast. Management won't ignore this mistake. Each sentence felt like a small weight pressing down on my chest. But I forced myself to stay calm. If someone had really changed a report, the system records should show it. And that meant the truth existed somewhere. I opened the company's document server and searched for the file history. Most employees didn't know how to check deep system logs, but I had learned it years earlier. The file history appeared on my screen. My first upload was still there. The timestamp matched exactly when I finished the report 2 nights earlier. But below it was another entry. My eyes narrowed. The file had been opened again late that night. And then it had been edited. I leaned closer to the screen. The editing account was listed, but instead of a name, it showed something strange. It showed my login credentials. My stomach dropped. Someone had used my account to change the report, which meant they either had my password or they had accessed my computer. Either way, the trap had been carefully planned. And now I understood something important. This wasn't just sabotage. It was identity theft inside the office system. Someone wanted to look like I had destroyed my own report. The discovery made my thoughts race. If someone had used my login, I needed to prove that it wasn't actually me. I checked the timestamp again. The edit happened at 11:42 p.m., 2 nights earlier. At that time, I was already at home. I remembered clearly because I had called a friend that evening. The call lasted almost an hour. That meant I couldn't have been inside the office network, unless someone had remote access to my account. I continued digging through the system logs. Another detail appeared. The login location showed the activity came from inside the office building. My chest tightened. Someone had stayed late that night. Someone who had access to the same network. Someone who knew exactly where the project file was stored. But the system log still only showed my account name. No other identity, which meant the person responsible had been careful. Very careful. I leaned back in my chair, thinking, if they used my credentials, they must have obtained them somehow. Maybe they watched me type my password. Maybe they used my computer when I wasn't around. Or maybe something else happened. Then a memory surfaced in my mind. 2 days before the report was finished, I had stepped away from my desk for lunch. When I returned, my computer screen was still unlocked. At the time, I hadn't thought much about it. Now, that memory felt very different. Because if someone had used my computer then, they could have easily learned my password. I decided not to confront anyone yet. Accusing someone without solid proof would only make things worse. Instead, I focused on collecting evidence. The system log told part of the story, but not the full truth. I needed something stronger, something impossible to deny. Later that afternoon, I walked to the security office on the first floor. The company had cameras in most hallways and office areas. If someone had entered the office late that night, the cameras might have captured it. A security staff member greeted me politely. "I need help checking footage from 2 nights ago," I explained. They asked for the time range. Between 11 and midnight, they searched the system and opened several camera feeds. The footage began playing. The office floor looked dark and quiet. Most employees had already gone home. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then movement appeared near the entrance. Someone walked into the office area. My heart beat faster. The person moved down the hallway, toward the workstations. The camera angle wasn't perfect, but the figure looked familiar. They stopped near my desk. Then they sat down in my chair. My computer screen lit up. The person typed for several minutes. Even without seeing the screen, I knew exactly what they were doing. They were using my computer, editing the project report, destroying the file, and making sure the system logs show my account. But the most important detail was now clear. The camera had recorded everything. The security staff paused the footage. "Do you recognize that person?" they asked. I looked at the screen carefully. The image wasn't perfectly clear, but I could still see the shape of the person's clothing, the posture, the way they moved. I recognized it immediately, but I didn't say the name out loud. Not yet. Instead, I asked for a copy of the footage. The staff member saved the clip and transferred it to a secure drive. "Thank you," I said. As I walked back to my desk, my thoughts were calmer now. The trap that had been set for me was starting to fall apart. The person responsible probably believed the system logs, would blame me completely, but they forgot about the cameras. And that mistake might expose everything. When I returned to the office floor, the whispers continued. Some coworkers looked at me with sympathy. Others looked satisfied. They thought the situation was already decided, but they didn't know what I had just discovered. I sat at my desk and watched the video again quietly. The figure in the footage leaned toward my computer screen, typing, scrolling, editing the report, then leaving the desk quickly. Every movement confirmed what I already knew. Someone had tried to destroy my work. Someone had tried to destroy my reputation. But now the truth was sitting in a video file on my laptop, and soon everyone would see it. The next morning, another meeting was scheduled. This time, the executives wanted a final explanation about the report situation. Word spread quickly across the office. Many people expected the meeting to end with serious consequences. Some even believed I would be fired. As I walked toward the conference room, I could feel the tension around me. Coworkers watched quietly as I passed. Inside the room, the executives were already seated. My manager nodded toward me. "Have you found anything?" they asked. "Yes," I replied. I connected my laptop to the presentation screen again. "The situation wasn't a mistake," I said calmly. "It was planned." The room grew quiet. I opened the system log first. This shows the report was edited using my account at 11:42 p.m. Several executives nodded. Then I played the security footage. The video appeared on the screen. The figure walked into the office, moved toward my desk, sat down, and began using my computer. A wave of whispers spread across the room, because now everyone could see the truth. Someone inside the company had used my computer late at night and deliberately changed the project report. But the most shocking moment was still coming, because in the final seconds of the footage, the person turned slightly toward the camera, and their face became clearly visible. Several people in the room gasped. The trap they set for me had just collapsed, and the truth had finally begun to reveal itself. The room fell silent as the video froze on the screen. The image clearly showed the person sitting at my desk. Even though the lighting was dim, the face was visible enough for everyone to recognize. A few executives leaned forward in their chairs. My manager looked shocked. Across the table, one coworker suddenly shifted uncomfortably. The director paused the video and turned slowly. "Would you like to explain this?" they asked. The coworker's face had turned pale. I think there's some misunderstanding," they said quickly, but the evidence was already clear. "You entered the office at 11:39 p.m., I said calmly. "You used my computer. You edited the project report." More whispers spread across the room. The coworkers shook their head. "I was just reviewing the report. They insisted you were logged into my account." I replied, "That means you used my computer directly." The director folded their hands. "And why was the report damaged after that review?" No answer came. The room stayed quiet. Finally, the co-worker spoke again. "It was an accident," but the excuse sounded weak. Everyone in the room had seen the video. No one believed that destroying multiple sections of a report was an accident. The director closed the laptop slowly. "This situation is now a formal investigation," they said. The meeting ended soon after, but the tension inside the office had only begun to grow because the person who tried to ruin my work had been exposed. And now everyone wanted to know why they did it. The rest of the day passed in a strange atmosphere. People who had whispered about me earlier now kept their distance. A few even stopped by my desk quietly. "I didn't know the full story," one person said. "I'm glad the truth came out," another added. I appreciated their words, but I knew the situation wasn't finished. The video proved someone used my computer, but the bigger question remained. Why sabotage the project report? Late that afternoon, my manager called me into their office again. They looked thoughtful. "Something about the situation still doesn't make sense," they said. I agree. They leaned forward. The damage report didn't just remove random information. It removed specific financial sections. That caught my attention. "What do you mean?" I asked. The missing data was related to supplier payments and budget tracking. I thought about that carefully. Those sections contained important financial details that upper management would examine closely. If those numbers disappeared, the entire project would look disorganized, which meant the report would fail the executive review. My manager continued, "But destroying those numbers also hides something else." "What?" I asked. "They hide irregular spending." My mind suddenly became alert. "Are you saying someone was trying to cover financial activity?" It's possible. For the first time, the sabotage looked like more than personal revenge. It might be connected to something larger, something hidden inside the project itself. And if that was true, then the person caught in the video might not be the only one involved. That evening, I stayed late at the office again. The building slowly became quiet as employees went home. I opened the project files and reviewed the financial sections carefully. At first, everything looked normal. Payments to suppliers, equipment purchases, standard project expenses. But after studying the numbers more closely, I noticed something strange. Several payment entries repeated similar amounts. The transactions were spaced exactly a few days apart, almost like a pattern. I checked the supplier names connected to those payments. One supplier appeared multiple times, more often than expected. I opened the company database to review that supplier. The account details appeared on the screen: address, contact number, registration information. But something about the address looked odd. It was listed as a small office building in another city. Curious, I searched the location online. The building existed, but according to public records, it didn't host the type of business listed in the project file. My heart began to beat faster. Could the supplier be fake? I opened the payment history again. The total amount paid to that supplier over the last 3 months was surprisingly large, much larger than any other vendor in the project. If those payments were real, someone should have noticed them. But if they were fake, then money might have been leaving the company quietly, and the missing report sections would have hidden those transactions completely. Suddenly, the sabotage made more sense. The broken report wasn't just meant to destroy my reputation. It was meant to hide the money trail. The next morning, I brought the information to my manager. They listened carefully as I explained everything: the strange payment pattern, the questionable supplier, the missing financial sections in the damage report. When I finished, they sat silently for several seconds. "This is serious," they said finally. "If these payments are fake, someone inside the company approved them." Exactly. They opened their computer and began checking internal approval records. Each financial transaction required authorization from a department supervisor. The system showed who approved each payment. My manager scrolled through the list slowly. Then they stopped. Their eyes narrowed. "Well," they said quietly, "that's interesting. Who approved them?" I asked. They turned the screen toward me. The same name appeared repeatedly beside the supplier payments. The very same co-worker who had been caught using my computer in the video. But something else made the situation even more troubling. Each approval required 2 signatures. And beside the co-worker's name, there was another one, someone higher in the department. My manager leaned back slowly. "This is bigger than we thought." The sabotage wasn't just one person trying to ruin my project. It looked like part of a larger scheme, a scheme that involved moving company money and hiding the evidence. And now that the report damage had been exposed, the people involved might realize their secret was close to being discovered. By the afternoon, the situation had grown more complicated. The director called another private meeting with several executives. My manager and I presented the financial findings: the suspicious supplier, the repeated payments, the approval records connected to the co-worker in the video. The executives listened carefully. One of them asked a simple but powerful question: "Has anyone verified that the supplier actually delivered the services listed?" The room became quiet, because none of us had checked that yet. The director immediately ordered a full review of the supplier contracts. Several department members were assigned to investigate the company records. While the investigation began, the co-worker caught in security footage was temporarily removed from their duties. Word spread quickly across the office. People were no longer whispering about my mistakes. Now they were whispering about something far more serious: possible financial fraud. Late that evening, the director called me again. "You did the right thing bringing this forward," they said. "But this situation might become even bigger." "How big?" I asked. They looked thoughtful. "If these payments were part of a fraud operation, we may be dealing with months of hidden activity." I understood what that meant. The trap that was meant to destroy me had opened a door to something much larger, something that could affect the entire company. And if the people responsible realized the truth was coming out, they might try one last desperate move to protect themselves, which meant the danger around the situation was not over yet, not even close. The investigation moved quickly after that meeting. By the next morning, the finance department had already begun reviewing every payment connected to the suspicious supplier. I could feel the tension in the office growing stronger. People spoke quietly. Emails moved faster than usual. Managers walked through the hallways more often. Something serious was unfolding. Around midday, my manager stopped by my desk. They found something. They said. My heart skipped. What did they discover? The supplier address. They replied. It doesn't match any registered business connected to our industry. That confirmed my earlier suspicion. The supplier might not even exist. My manager continued. And the bank account used for the payments leads to a private financial account. My stomach tightened. Whose account? They're still verifying it. My manager said the investigation team had already frozen future payments to that supplier. That meant whoever was receiving the money could no longer continue the scheme. And that worried me, because when someone's plan suddenly collapses, they sometimes react in desperate ways. Later that afternoon, I noticed something strange. The co-worker who'd been caught in the security footage had not returned to the office. Normally, even during investigations, employees were still required to attend meetings. But this time, their desk was empty. Their computer was turned off. A quiet feeling of unease spread through my thoughts, because if they had disappeared suddenly, it might mean they already knew the investigation was getting close to the truth. The next day brought even bigger news. Early in the morning, my manager called me into the conference room again. Several executives were already there. The director looked serious but focused. The financial investigation is moving faster than expected, they said. They turned a laptop screen toward me. This bank account received the supplier payments. The name connected to the account appeared on the screen. I stared at it. The co-worker from the security footage. The same person who edited my report. My manager spoke next. The account has received multiple transfers over the past 3 months. The total amount was shocking. Far more than a normal employee's salary. So the supplier company was fake. I said slowly, yes. The director confirmed. They created the supplier entry inside the project system and approved the payments themselves. But that still requires 2 approval signatures. I reminded them. The director nodded. We know. Another name appeared on the screen. Someone higher in the department. Someone with authority to approve project budgets. For a moment, the room became very quiet, because the situation had now grown larger than anyone expected. This wasn't just one employee stealing money. It looked like 2 people had been working together. One created the fake supplier. The other helped approve the payments. And when the project report threatened to expose those transactions, they tried to destroy the evidence by destroying my report. Later that afternoon, the entire department was called into a staff meeting. People filled the large conference room, whispering nervously. Everyone sensed something important was about to happen. The director stood at the front of the room. The company has completed a preliminary investigation, they announced. The room fell silent. They continued calmly. We discovered financial activity involving a false supplier account. Gasps moved through the crowd. Certain employees used this account to approve payments that should never have been authorized. People looked around at each other. No one spoke. Then the director added something else. An attempt was made to hide these payments by altering the project report. Several heads turned toward me. For the first time, people understood what had really happened. The broken report had never been my mistake. It had been part of a cover-up. The director finished the announcement. The employees involved had been suspended pending further investigation. The room stayed quiet, but the mood had changed completely. The whispers that once questioned my work had disappeared. Now those whispers carried a different message. Relief, respect, and surprise, because the person many believed had ruined the project had actually uncovered the truth behind it. After the meeting ended, several co-workers approached me. I'm sorry for doubting you, one person said. I thought the report mistakes were real, another admitted. I appreciated their honesty. But more than anything, I felt relieved. The truth had finally reached the surface. Later that day, my manager stopped by my desk again. The director wants to speak with you, they said. I walked into the office feeling curious. The director looked up with a calm smile. You handled a very difficult situation well, they said. I just followed the evidence. I replied. They nodded. That kind of thinking is exactly what this company needs. They opened a folder on the desk. Your report saved the company from losing a large amount of money. Hearing that made the entire experience feel real. The broken report, the accusations, the investigation. Everything had started with someone trying to make me fail. But instead, the truth had changed everything. The director leaned back slightly. And there is one more thing we want to discuss. I could tell from their expression that this conversation was important, because sometimes, when people prove themselves under pressure, new opportunities appear. The director folded their hands on the desk. We are reorganizing the project department after the situation, they explained. That makes sense, I said. The investigation showed weaknesses in how approvals were handled. They nodded. Exactly. Then they continued. We need someone to help rebuild the process. My attention sharpened. Someone who understands the system and who proved they can identify problems early. For a moment, I simply listened. Then the director finished the sentence. We would like you to lead the new oversight team. I blinked. Lead it. Yes. The role would involve reviewing project reports, verifying financial records, and preventing situations like this from happening again. In other words, they wanted me to take a leadership role. Just weeks earlier, people had whispered about my failure. Now the same company was asking me to help guide its future projects. The director smiled slightly. You turned a difficult situation into an important discovery. I took a slow breath. The trap that had been set for me had nearly destroyed my reputation, but it had also revealed something much bigger. And now, because the truth came out, my career was moving in a direction I never expected. The worst moment of my professional life had become something else entirely, a turning point. And the story was not finished yet. I left the director's office slowly, still processing everything that had just happened. Only a few weeks earlier, I had walked into a meeting expecting to defend myself from accusations. Now I had just been asked to lead a new oversight team. The change felt almost unreal. When I returned to my desk, several coworkers looked at me curiously. News traveled fast in the office. Before long, people began asking questions. Is it true you're leading a new review team? That's what the director mentioned. I replied carefully. Some coworkers smiled. Others looked impressed. But what surprised me most was how quickly the atmosphere around me had changed. Just days earlier, whispers had followed me through the office. People assumed I had ruined an important project. Now those same people spoke to me with respect. Later that afternoon, my manager came over. You earned that opportunity, they said. I just did what anyone should do. I replied. They shook their head. Not everyone keeps searching for the truth when things turn against them. Their words stayed with me for the rest of the day, because they were right. When the broken report appeared, it would have been easy to panic. It would have been easy to give up. But instead, I had kept looking for answers. And those answers uncovered something much bigger than a damaged report. They uncovered a scheme that had been quietly stealing from the company for months. Sometimes the truth doesn't appear immediately, but when you keep searching, it eventually finds its way to the surface. The following week was busy. The company officially announced the creation of the new oversight team. My role would involve reviewing project reports, checking financial records, and making sure approval systems work correctly. It was a big responsibility, but I felt ready for it. The investigation into the fraud continued behind the scenes. Legal teams and financial auditors reviewed every payment connected to the fake supplier. More details slowly came to light. The coworker who had used my computer had created the fake supplier account months earlier. The second person involved had helped approve the payments. Together, they had moved company money into private accounts without raising suspicion until the project report was prepared. My report contained the full financial summary. If it had reached the executives without changes, the suspicious payments would have appeared immediately. That was why they damaged the file. They wanted the report to fail. They wanted the meeting to focus on my mistakes instead of the financial data. But their plan had one flaw. They underestimated how closely I would check the evidence. And because of that mistake, their entire scheme collapsed. A few days later, the director held another company meeting. This time, the atmosphere felt completely different. People were calmer. The tension that once filled the office had faded. At the front of the room, the director explained the final results of the investigation. The fraudulent payments have been stopped, they announced. The company has recovered a large portion of the lost funds. A quiet wave of relief spread across the room. The director continued. This situation reminded us how important transparency and accountability are. Then they looked toward me. And it also reminded us that one person's dedication can protect an entire organization. I felt slightly embarrassed by the attention, but I appreciated the recognition. After the meeting ended, several coworkers approached me again. You handled the situation well. You stayed calm when most people would have panicked. I thanked them politely. But deep inside, I knew something important. The story wasn't about recognition. It was about truth. Truth had protected my reputation. Truth had exposed a fraud. And truth had changed the direction of my career. As the weeks passed, the new oversight team began its work. We reviewed project systems carefully. We improved approval procedures. We created stronger checks to prevent similar problems in the future. The work was challenging, but it felt meaningful. One afternoon, my manager stopped by my office. You know something? They said with a small smile. What's that? The people who tried to destroy your career actually ended up strengthening it. I thought about that for a moment. They were right. If the report had never been sabotaged, I might have simply completed the project and moved on to the next assignment. No one would have discovered the fraud, and I probably would not have been given the opportunity to lead the oversight team. Sometimes the events that look like disasters at first are actually turning points, but you can only see that later. At the time, all you see is the challenge in front of you and the choice you must make: give up or search for the truth. Months later, I often remember the morning when everything began. The early arrival at the office, the strange emails, the broken project report. At that moment, it felt like my career was collapsing. Whispers filled the office. People assumed the worst. But that day also taught me an important lesson. Truth has a quiet strength. At first, it may seem hidden beneath confusion and accusations. But if you stay patient and keep looking for facts, the truth slowly rises, piece by piece, evidence by evidence, until it becomes impossible to ignore. The people who tried to destroy my reputation believed they had planned the perfect trap. They thought I would be blamed for their mistakes. They thought the damage report would end my career. But their plan overlooked something simple. Truth always leaves clues. And once those clues appear, everything begins to change. The accusations disappear. The whispers stop. And the story takes a completely different direction. What started as an attempt to make me fail ended with the truth revealing everything. And in the end, that truth didn't just clear my name. It changed my entire future.